Hello, welcome to the Marriage Underdog Radio Show. I'm your host, Chris A. Matthews, and once again, I have another phenomenal guest. I would like to introduce you all to Dr. Stephanie Zepeda out of Texas. Hello, how are you doing, Stephanie?
Hey y'all, coming at y'all from H-Town.
Definitely, definitely. Home of Beyonce, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, of course, Queen Bee. Yeah.
So we're gonna have a great time on this show, as we always do. I like to start, yes, for those who are familiar, Dr. Zepeda is a licensed marriage and family therapist, another LMFT. And I always like to start by giving our guests an opportunity to share how they got into the field of counseling, because my belief is that therapists are not just employees or employers. We are called to do this work. So talk about that calling that led you into this field, Dr. Zepeda.
Yeah, I love that you frame it as a calling. It is vocational. It absolutely is, like, it's different than other careers, right? And so I think if I reflect back, I when I originally went to undergrad, I was a philosophy major and I was going to go be an attorney. And then I switched to pre-med. I was a biology major. I was going to be a gynecologist, right?
You're trying to make like whatever profession had like big payout. You're like attorneys make a lot of money.
It
Doctor,
wasn't it was the money, but it also was just I wanted to change the world. I don't know. I had a very, like, I don't know, a heart for change, right? And so I think that heart did guide me to a field where I could make change. But I realized when I was doing some internships at MD Anderson Cancer Center, a huge cancer hospital here in Houston. And I realized when I was doing my studies, I was so drawn to, I was in the gynecologic oncology department, and I was just like so drawn to the women's stories
mm,
and their lives and how this diagnosis was impacting their marriage. And I realized, I remember looking at my mentor during a surgery. I was watching a surgery with him, and I just said, I think I care more about their lives than their uteruses. And he's like, okay. And so that's when I didn't even know about the field of marriage and family therapy. I thought I needed to be a clinical psychologist, and I think God had other plans, thank goodness, because I think I would have been terribly unhappy had I gone that route. Because I realize now that that's much more research based, much less clinically focused, right? And so I heard about marriage family therapy at a psychology club night. I was there for the free pizza, but they had a marriage and family therapist speaking on a panel, and I was like, whoa, that's a thing. And so I looked into it. I found some doctoral programs in Texas because I knew I wanted to stay in Texas, and found a COMFT accredited program, St. Mary's in San Antonio, and applied there, got in, and just was really, really happy to have stumbled upon something that aligned so well with my philosophy of living and life and my view of the human person, right? I genuinely think that uh, I was guided along this path here because um, just the idea that we are systems, that we are all connected, it fits so well with my framing and my anthropology, and then now to be able to bring that same way of thinking to the university where I'm a professor at Our Lady of the Lake University, Houston,
mm-hmm.
the only, as of right now, the only COMFT accredited program in Houston. And we love teaching these systemic principles. We're really still faithful to that model and way of thinking. And we teach specifically a social constructionist model, right, where we are looking at narrative therapy, solution focused therapy, collaborative dialogical practices, kind of helping people find their truths and to live those fully and contextually. And I really do feel, I was reflecting on it the other day. I really do feel like every single step along my life has just been leading me to what I'm doing now. And I just feel so blessed to be in it.
I'm so glad you shared, because as you walk us through this journey of how you became LMFT, it's poetic. I hear the philosophy come out when you speak. I'm also drawn into the fact that you were looking at a career that focused on the internal parts of women, but that wasn't deep enough. You had to go even deeper into the internal parts of women, and talk about the work that you do. I know before the show we had a little conversation and you mentioned couples.
Mhm.
Does that mean you only work with couples? Talk about the populations that you service and your avatar, like your
Yeah.
ideal.
Yeah. So I'm the program director at Our Lady of the Lake University's Houston MFT program, and then I also have a practice, Financial Therapy Texas, and there I how I how I got from you know what I was doing originally to this was actually through couples. I fresh out of grad school, finished up my doctorate, all that. I was like, oh, I'll see anybody, right? Will you pay me? I will see you. That was my only criteria. Um, and so I was just seeing folks, and the more that I was working with my couples, this it it was this kind of elephant in the room
Mm,
that they'd be arguing and having these tensions and these troubles. And I think just from often, right, like we are wounded healers, right?
right, absolutely.
And when we bring our pain to our craft, beautiful things happen, right? And so I think because I had like personally just a lot of weird relationship with money, it's like a lot of like financial anxiety and stuff. You know, I think that that's what maybe brought it to my mind. But I just started asking couples. They didn't come to see me for financial therapy. They were coming for, communication or what have you. But I would just start asking, like, what role does money play in y'all's relationship? And it would just unlock all these conversations and all these different directions that they would say, like, thank you for asking about that. We didn't know we could talk about that here. Or, yeah, this has been a huge problem. Or, yeah, I don't feel like I can talk about this with my partner. And just all these really things that were underneath the conversation, but were never articulated. And so I started
Kind of stumbled across it then.
yeah, I just kind of started. And so I said, oh, gosh, there's something here. And I did some research. I found there's a whole Financial Therapy Association. There's a whole like research realm dedicated to this. So I just started consuming everything I could, reading every single article, learning as much as I could. And
What are
really,
some of the data? What are some of the data points the listeners can hear? Like a lot of people have heard over time, money is a reason for divorce. And as you think of our show topic, under marriage underdogs, those couples that might be in a tough season, talk about like and I'm not asking you to be an encyclopedia. Are there
yeah.
certain data points? Are there certain measurements or things that couples can be aware of? Like, how do we know when money becomes a problem in our marriage, and how frequent do you find couples bringing in that as the primary issue?
Yeah. So no, I love that. So like when I was like doing some research, like one of the most interesting data points was that it's within the first 7 years. After 7 years, I don't know what it is, but if you get divorced within the first 7 years, money's the number one reason quoted for dissolution.
Wow. So if you get
And
divorced within the first 7 years, money is typically the number one reason.
right, right. And so I think that um, that was very interesting to me, right? It's that it can make you quite vulnerable to dissolution if you haven't kind of had those conversations.
And why is it? Is it because it's the money itself, or is it the emotional attachment? Is it both? because people are emotionally attached to money, and we learn that from our childhood.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We do. I always do a lot of in my intake sessions. I'll ask couples, and a lot of times it'll continue beyond intake session. What lessons did you get, good and bad, from your family of origin? And family of origin does not mean just, your blood family. I mean, your culture, your society, how often you moved, what city you lived in, all those things, right? Your friends, your friends' parents, like what did you learn about money?
Your community, like all of that.
All of it, every single piece of it. What did you learn about money? What were the messages you got? And people, it's so interesting. Like people, they say opposites attract, and with finances, it's so true. You have the person who really craves financial security get together with the person who likes to say, YOLO, let's just do this, right?
Let's get it. Yeah.
Yeah. And they always marry each other, right? And so I think having those conversations beforehand, it doesn't happen near often enough.
Those conversations happen though. Talk about that.
Right. So I think a lot of it is having to do with, we kind of tend to keep things separate, and we say, okay, let's just keep things separate, and then that'll be fine, and we'll just keep it separate. And which is like when you're first dating, of course, you just met this person. Why are you going to merge finances with them? But then we continue that kind of separate mentality throughout the relationship as we start to combine a home, combine our genetics and make children, combine our worlds. But then we'll keep even if we merge, let's say they do merge accounts, which, within married couples, half do, half don't, right? It's about, I think, 46% keep it completely separate, and then 54% do merge accounts.
Do you find that there's a better outcome for marriage based on those two camps? One camp better than the other, or is the data kind of split between?
It depends on how,
divorce more than the other?
Yeah, it depends on how I don't have a data point on it, but just from like clinical experience, it depends on how you do the money. Hi, my baby. She's coming, my therapy dog. This is Iris, everybody. I think that you can do merged accounts and have it be terrible, right? If you still aren't having conversations about the money, if you're still both ignoring the flow of money throughout the household. And you could do separate accounts beautifully. You can do separate accounts that still have accountability and transparency, right? But I think that that's the main intention is, are we being transparent, and are we being intentional about the spending and the flow of money within the household? And I think there's good reason to keep stuff separate sometimes, right? I think that, if someone has had a financial trauma, right? Sorry, my dog's being crazy. If someone has had a financial trauma in their life, and they, let's say it's a second marriage for them, and in their first marriage, they
had a partner blow all the money.
Had a major partner infidelity, a financial infidelity, where someone gambled all the money away, right? And they don't feel safe being in a relationship where everything is merged. Well, then great, let's reframe that. You're protecting the family.
Right.
You're protecting
I love that. That was great.
Yeah.
And for those that are listening, it sounds like what I'm hearing you say, the first point, within this first 7 years, if you find yourself having conflicts or dialogues around money that aren't going in the right direction, get help, because that's an indicator. And then I'm also hearing between separate and joint accounts, it's not necessarily if they're separate or joint. It's really about the communication or the lack thereof that may or may not be had, which produces the issue. So when you have intentional conversations about money, that's going to help, versus if you just pick one or the other.
Right. And the thing is, Chris, we aren't taught how to have intentional conversations about money.
So let's go there, right? What are some of the frameworks? And I know we're just have a long time to go through a whole course on it, but and this is your wheelhouse. You're a professor. You this stuff to people, right? So what are some of kind of the bullet points real quick, if we just kind of had like a fire round where you were just kind of spitting out points to help the listeners gain a better understanding of what a framework would look like on how to have the conversation around money,
Yeah.
tough
No,
conversations in general.
yeah, I literally just wrote a blog on this just a couple days ago. So like, the timing's perfect. No, this is a great question. So yeah, it's we aren't taught how to have these money conversations. We are taught the opposite, actually. We're taught don't talk about money. It's rude. You're burdening someone with your troubles, or you're bragging. Like, we are taught that money is not brought up in polite society, right? So that means that we don't have a framework when we enter in these relationships of how to discuss money. And so it can be really awkward and uncomfortable. I would say, I mean, sex used to be taboo, but now people they talk about sex all the time. They still don't talk about money. People would rather talk about that than money these days, I think, which is great for an opening up of those conversations. I don't want to disparage that, but
So the first one is getting past the stigma. That sounds like the first thing. Getting past the stigma, getting comfortable being uncomfortable and talking about it.
Right. Yeah, again, and really, there were three questions that I kind of came up with to be good springboards, right? And the first one is, and this is just my solution focused trend, is you don't start with what's wrong with you. You don't start with that. You start with, what are your financial goals and hopes and dreams for the future, right?
I like that. So starting out with a direction you want to get to, almost like when you enter your address into a GPS, you don't start out lost, right? You start out with where you're trying to go. So for those that are listening, step one, ask your partner the question: what are your hopes and dreams for your financial future? What does that look like? Because you can't teach someone else a vision you don't have for yourself first,
right? And with this question, I'll caution, it's okay if they don't align.
Absolutely.
Someone may have, my husband and I, oh my gosh, we do not align. We're very different financially. Like, his hopes and dreams are, beach house, all that stuff, buying a ranch, right? He's very into land. I don't know why. Mine is having a really nice retirement portfolio, right? Because I really crave safety. That's my financial anxiety talking. And so it's okay if those don't align. And you also don't have to figure out, well, how are we going to do this? Just let those hopes and dreams come out, right? It can be really pragmatic stuff. It can be really just dream stuff of, I want to travel, I want to go on a big trip 3 times a year. Like, that can be the hope and dream. But
have
it's
a
important
plan.
to say it out loud. Have a hope, and then the plan, and then the plan. But first,
what would be the second question?
Yeah. So the second one is, it takes it out of the hopes and the aspirations, and brings it to where we are today. It's, how do you feel about our current financial situation?
Gotcha. So the first one is where we're trying to go. We're gonna pull it back down to, okay, let's evaluate where you are now.
Yeah. Where do you want to go? Where are we now?
Where you want to go, where you are now. Okay.
Yeah. And how are you feeling about that? Like, is that, are you feeling good? Are you feeling uncomfortable? Are you feeling ambivalent? You're not sure, right? Like that. Where are you?
So where we are now, but what are the feelings around where we are now too with the money? Okay.
Correct. Absolutely. Because if you have one partner who is really not really anxious, or really kind of frightened or scared about the money situation, and then the other person is not, well, they may not be aware. So for them, talking about money might be easier, whereas someone who's a little bit more anxious or avoidant might be a little bit more difficult, right? And so checking in about the feelings and the like understanding the meaning of money for that person.
This is good. And what would the third one be?
So the third one is, it's kind of like, where do we want to go? Where are we now? And then what do we need to change, right?
How do we get there?
Yeah. So the third one is, what are some money habits or spending patterns that we should address together? Right. So kind of you know, if we're going to get where we want to go, if we're going to get to beach house, if we're going to get to 3 trips a year, if we're going to get there, what are we doing now that we should probably change? Right.
Yes.
So it kind of sets up, it gives just a little 3-question framework where people can have this conversation. And as I write in the blog, right, this has to be done in a space of non-judgment.
Absolutely. And so one thing I want to highlight that's very, I want to be mindful of, the order matters here, because
Oh, yeah.
a lot of people want to eagerly get to step 3, and then when step 3 doesn't work, they just throw it to the wayside.
Yeah.
Where you want to go, where you are now, that starts to develop within the couple a place of safety and security. Because if we start with 3, then we're just dismissing 2 important parts: where you want to go and where you are now. And at that point, no one's even being heard. So you're practicing being heard before you collaboratively come together to even try to make a solution or a plan.
Precisely, man. Well intuited. Yeah. Yeah. And it's also, it makes it more fun if you just go into, we've got to change these things.
Right. That's
I
not fun.
mean, that's punitive. That's weird, right? I mean, would you do that with sex therapy? Like, hey, you're not doing this right. No, you wouldn't. You would start with, where do we want to go? How are you feeling right now? Right. And so I think this is a cool framework, like you were saying before, for almost any difficult conversation, right?
Nice.
What are
Yeah.
your hopes? Where are we now? What do we need to shift? And it's applying that to finances, right? Yeah.
That's good stuff right there. You blessed a lot of people with that just now.
Yeah, thank you, friend. Thank you.
Now, when we'll change gears, this is gonna be our last question area that we
Sure.
dive in for this show. You know my passion around protecting the public when it comes to obtaining mental health services. And I
Mm.
say protecting the public because, one, it takes a lot of vulnerability to even attempt to seek a counselor out. That's hard.
Yeah.
So I feel like when people reach out to a counselor, some people may have like this is going to be the only shot, and if it goes in, awesome. If it doesn't, I'm not shooting again.
Yeah.
So what can listeners, what can the public, what can listeners take from this episode
Mm.
that can help them along their research or their exploration journey to finding the right therapist, the right counsel? Like what characteristics, everything from education, like why does the education even matter? Like, jobs, relationship, Joe's relationship company, he's a great speaker, or the guy that has a TV show, should I go to him for my marriage? Like, what do people need to look for, and why is it important to look for those things?
Yeah, it's great. I guess before I go to professions, I'll go to that common factors data. So the common factors data, for those listeners who may not know about it, is this these studies that they did where they were saying, okay, we know that there's like almost 1,000 therapeutic models, right? And we know that they all work kind of equally well. And kind of equally poorly. But what is it about the models when it works? What is it? So they found all these common factors. And the data varies from study to study of how much the percentage is, but it can be as much as, from 60% to 90% is actually the client. It's extra therapeutic factors. It has nothing to do with you. It has you as a therapist. It has everything to do with the client's strengths and the client's resources and the client's community and life. So of that 10 to 40%, the biggest factor that therapists bring is the therapeutic alliance. So it doesn't mean you have to be friends with your therapist. We're friendly, but we're not friends. Like if you are not feeling that connection with your therapist, it doesn't mean you're bad or they're bad. It just means it's not a great fit. It's like
Like dating me.
It's like dating, or finding a pair of shoes, right? Maybe it's just not a good fit. Let me go try a different pair, right? Don't give up. Don't give up. Don't think, oh, therapy sucks because we didn't connect, or I suck as a client because we didn't connect, or my marriage is doomed for failure. No, no, no. Try again. Try again. If you didn't connect, well, think back to that data. That therapeutic alliance is the biggest factor regarding therapeutic success. More than your license, more than your training, more than your model, more than anything is your therapeutic alliance. So if you, let's say you went to Chris, and you know what, man, we just didn't connect. Okay, cool. Go try someone else, right? Let's say you tried therapy online. Man, we didn't connect. Okay, try it in person.
Yeah.
Change one variable at a time and try to find a better fit. Also, MFTs, we're really nice. Like, if you email us and you say, hey, listen, I love you as a therapist, but I'm just not feeling a connection. We love that feedback. Don't be scared to ever tell us. You can say, hey, do you have anyone who you trust, who you think might be a better fit for me? Oh my gosh. If I ever get that feedback from a client, I love it, because then I say, you know what? Yes. And sometimes your therapist can feel it too. Your therapist knows we're not clicking. We're not clicking. I can feel it too. And so they wouldn't be surprised to get that email from you. Send them that email, say, hey, do you have any recommendations? They can help guide you, right? So as far as looking and screening, I would say that, our entire field, if you're looking for couples work, it makes sense to look for someone who is specifically trained in that. Marriage and family therapist is the only license in the entire United States that has mandatory relational training hours, both during their graduate school training and in their post-grad training. So it makes sense that if I need my hand fixed, I'm going to go to a hand surgeon. If I need my relationship helped, I'm going to go to someone who specializes in that. And so we have an entire license that's dedicated to this. I'm not saying I have amazing friends who are in social work and psychology, who do beautiful couples work, who trained me and are just amazing. But you want to look at their vita. You want to see, okay, where was this person trained with therapists? Because the ones that I'm talking about, my friends, they are very well trained, and you can see it on their vita. You can see it on their resume. You can see their relational training. You want to make sure that someone knows what they're doing, because it's not that other licenses cannot do it. They absolutely can, but they need that training because it's a different skill set. Trying to help one person realize their hopes and dreams is very different than having two people in the room who have two different hopes and dreams that you then have to merge, or help them merge. And so it really just does take a different skill set. So specifically when you're looking for couples therapists, look for a marriage and family therapist, or look at someone's vita, see if they have that relational training. And you can ask them too, say, hey, what percentage of your caseload is couples? If it's 50%, okay, cool. If it's only 5%, okay, maybe I want to go to someone who sees couples more regularly, right? But then also, like, back to that point that, just making sure, even if you go to someone who sees only couples and is amazing, if you're not connecting, try again. Yeah.
And that was very helpful, because parts that stood out, asking the questions too, and not being afraid to go try out a counselor. And if it's not working, the counselor can feel it too. Exactly. That's exactly right. And the goal of the counselor is to get you and your partner in the right place with the right person, even if they're not that person. Yeah, there's so many people in need of our services that we're not like short for clients. It's like, so therapists are going to work together, and personality does matter, and some people might feel more comfortable with a particular gender or race or what have you. So I'm glad you shared that. As we close out, I love our guests to have a final thought. It could be a comment, statement, question of wisdom that just really points into the direction of resiliency, right? Marriage underdogs. We're dealing with spouses who are in a tough season of their marriage. What can you say to those people listening that are on on an island and they feel like it's just them and their partner and no one's there to help them?
Yeah, I would say you'd be shocked at how common the problems you think are only yours, and how many people also are dealing with really similar struggles. And I have seen couples come back from stuff and have beautiful, thriving relationships, come back from some hard stuff. And I'm talking over 100 grand credit card debt. I'm talking major infidelities, financial and physical. And never underestimate the power of forgiveness in your heart.
Amen. I love that.
So yeah, that's what I would share with couples who are feeling in that underdog status and feeling like, man, I just can't get this right. Don't give up hope. There's the ability to change.
Definitely. Man, that was beautiful. I felt that. Dr. Stephanie Zepeda, you have been phenomenal. I'm thankful for the opportunity to sit with you. That's one of the joys and the beauties of hosting this podcast, to be able to hear so many amazing professionals like yourself. I'll definitely put in the show notes how people can contact you. But for those that are listening, maybe driving, how can people reach you? What are some of your social media handles and just information to help people connect with you?
Yeah, perfect. And thank you so much again for reaching out, connecting with me. I am just beyond thrilled that this podcast exists, and just I'm so proud of your work, and yeah, I'm just really happy to be a part of it. But yeah, my contacts, you can hit me up on Instagram at Financial Therapy Texas, also Facebook Financial Therapy Texas, or just my website. And I publish to my blog fairly regularly, so if anyone is interested in signing up for my blog, you can do that on the Financial Therapy Texas website. And then if anyone's interested in becoming a marriage or family therapist, and you are, wanting to practice in the Houston area, Our Lady of the Lake University, Houston, we are, I don't want to brag, but we're a pretty cool program. It's awesome because it's made for working professionals, right, who have lives and families and careers. And the classes meet every other Saturday for 7 Saturdays a semester instead of 4 or 5 times a week, right? And so it's really rigorous, it's really rigorous, but it's very flexible at the same time. So anyone considering a career in marriage and family therapy, it's worth the move to H-Town to come study with us there. So my practice is at Financial Therapy Texas, and then my family therapy program is Our Lady of the Lake University, Houston campus.
Phenomenal. I'm so thrilled to have had the opportunity to connect with you today. The information you shared, I'm processing. I'm taking notes. I took notes myself on a lot of the data points and information associated with finances and how that can be a blessing or a curse for a marriage. So thank you. Once again, Dr. Stephanie Zepeda. I've been your host today, Chris A. Matthews with Marriage Underdogs. We air our shows every Tuesday by way of Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Please continue to tune in, like, comment, share, and look forward to having you back again at some point, Dr. Zepeda. This was great. And thank you for all those that have tuned in and listened. And we'll see you next week for another episode. Thanks.